She stares at the jacket hanging by the door, his jacket, the one he always left there, even when he stopped staying the night. She meant to throw it out weeks ago, but every time her hand reached for it, something stopped her. Not love, not hope, just memory. The house is quiet tonight. The kind of quiet that doesn't soothe, the kind that echoes. She walks to the kitchen, opens a cupboard, and there it is again. The mug he used, the chipped one she used to hate. Now it feels sacred. Isn't it strange? How the smallest things carry the heaviest weight once they're gone. She pours tea, stares out the window, and without warning, his laugh floods her mind. Not the fights, not the nights he left her questioning her own worth. Just that laugh. The way it used to make her believe they were unbreakable. Her heart clenches, and for a moment she hates herself for missing him. After everything, after the lies, after the loneliness she felt even when he was right beside her. Why do I still feel this pull? Why does missing him feel stronger than remembering what he did? She doesn't talk about it. She knows what her friends would say. They'd remind her of the pain, the betrayal, the way she shrank just to make him stay, and they said to be right. But missing someone isn't set logical. It doesn't ask for permission. It arrives like a ghost, uninvited, familiar, cold. And tonight, she lets herself feel it. Not because she wants him back, but because pretending she doesn't miss him feels like another lie she's tired of telling. She wraps her arms around herself, softly, as if to say, I know it still hurts. This is what no one tells you about healing. You can know he was wrong for you, and still miss who you hoped he would be. So if you stir here, if your heart is heavy and your memories are louder than your logic, you stir not crazy, you're just grieving a love that never became what it promised. Stay with me, because what you stir feeling isn't set weakness. It stits the truth, finally asking to be seen. Maybe it wasn't set all bad. That's the thought that slips in while she's brushing her hair, folding laundry, pretending to be fine. Her mind doesn't replay the fights, the cold silences, the slow erosion of her self-worth. No, it replays the way he used to kiss her forehead, the way his hand found hers in a crowd, the night he told her she felt like home. And that's the trick of the wounded heart. It remembers in fragments. The good feels brighter, the pain fades into shadows. Because to fully feel what happened would mean facing the truth. She gave her everything to someone who couldn't hold it. She smiles around friends, says, I'm good, I'm better now. And part of her is, but there sips another part, quieter, buried, that wonders, was it my fault? Did I expect too much? If I had been more patient, would he have stayed? She doesn't miss him, not really. She misses the moments she thought were real. She misses the version of herself that still believed love would be enough to fix what was broken. Deep down, she fears she was too easy to leave. That maybe she is too much, too emotional, too deep, too intense. She fears that the next man will get the same tired version of her, the one who no longer trusts her own feelings. And yet, there sits a flicker. A voice that hasn't quite died. A whisper beneath all the self-blame and confusion that says, you were never too much. You just gave your heart to someone who wasn't ready for it. But still, she wonders. Every night the bed feels too big. Every time a memory flashes without warning. Every time she laughs and thinks, he would have loved that joke, only to remember, he's gone. And he left. Not because she lacked something, but because he didn't know how to value what she brought. And now she walks the quiet path of rebuilding, of understanding that healing isn't just letting go of him. It's letting go of the story she told herself to survive the loneliness. Every morning Leah made the bed like he still lived there. tucked the sheets tight, smoothed the pillows just how he liked. Even though he hadn't slept beside her in months, his toothbrush was still in the cup. His cologne still sat on the dresser. She told herself she'd clear it out soon, maybe tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. She still checked her phone every night, hoping to see his name, even knowing he wouldn't sit text, even knowing the last words he said were, "I just need space." She didn't tell her friends how often she reread their old messages, how she still saved voice notes just to hear him say her name. They would sit told her to delete everything, but they didn't understand. He had been her person, even if he never really treated her like she was his. One afternoon she found herself standing in the cereal aisle holding his favorite brand, out of habit. And in that moment, beneath the harsh grocery lights and the weight of the ordinary, something inside her broke, not with tears, with clarity. She wasn't missing him. She was missing the illusion, the version of him she clung to so tightly, hoping he'd grow into it. The man she thought he could be, the love she thought they were building. She placed the box back on the shelf, walked out of the store empty-handed, and for the first time in weeks, she felt full, not because he came back, but because she finally did. Why do I miss the way he made me feel, but ignore the way he made me question myself? Why do I keep mistaking his absence for something I did wrong? When did I start believing that love meant waiting to be chosen? And if I have to lose parts of myself just to keep someone, is that really love at all? These are the quiet wounds, the questions that echo late at night, when the world is quiet and her guard is down. She doesn't say them out loud, not to friends, not even to herself, but they live there just beneath the surface. She scrolls through old photos and wonders, was any of it real? Did he ever truly see me? Or was I always just a placeholder until he found what he really wanted? The truth is, she doesn't miss the pain. She misses the version of herself that still believed it wasn't pain. The one who kept trying, hoping, waiting, because letting go felt like failure. But maybe it's not failure to stop reaching. Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's her turn to be the one who walks away. Not in anger, but in awakening. There is a sorrow that doesn't scream. It lingers, like perfume on an empty shirt. A sorrow shaped not by what was lost, but by what was never truly had. And yet she still misses him. Not because he was good to her, but because he mirrored something old, something deep. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But how can she accept herself when her earliest version of love was laced with abandonment? When affection always came with a condition, or didn't come at all, so she repeats. Not because she enjoys pain, but because the psyche clings to what it knows, because the unconscious searches not for joy, but for familiarity. She keeps choosing men who withhold love, because deep within there is a little girl still waiting for someone to stay, to choose her fully, to see her not just when she's pleasing, but when she's human. The pattern doesn't begin with him. It began long before. Maybe her father loved her distantly. Maybe her mother only smiled when she was quiet. Maybe emotions were too much, or not enough. Maybe she was taught, without words, that love must be earned. And so now, as a woman, she doesn't feel safe in peace. Peace feels unfamiliar. Safe love feels boring. But chaos? Emotional highs and lows? That feels like home. She sits not broken. She sits loyal. Loyal to the emotional blueprint written in her earliest years, until she brings it into the light. It will keep choosing for her, because the wounded child inside her doesn't want revenge. She doesn't want validation. She wants redemption. She wants to win the love she was denied. even if it comes from someone who can give it. But here's the truth. You cannot heal a childhood wound in the arms of someone who triggers it. You cannot rewrite your worth through someone else's love. You must return to the one who waited the longest. You, not the polished version, not the perfect one, but the tender, raw, longing soul beneath the armor. And when she begins to love that version, the one who cried silently for years, who tolerated too much just to be kept, everything begins to shift. The pattern weakens, the ache lessens, and she begins to see she didn't dismiss him. She missed the feeling she hoped he'd finally give her. And now she can give it to herself. It happened in the smallest moment, the kind no one else would notice. She was folding laundry. A shirt of his had somehow stayed mixed in the pile. Even after all this time, she held it for a second longer than she meant to, pressed it to her face without thinking. It still smelled faintly of him, of something old, distant, almost imaginary. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just stood there. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. Like air returning to lungs that forgot how to breathe without tension. She stared at the shirt, and a question rose up from somewhere deep, somewhere ancient. Why am I still holding what he left behind? Not just this shirt, but all of it. The hope, the self-doubt, the idea that she had to earn love through endurance. She walked to the trash, dropped the shirt in without ceremony, and in that moment, something inside her shifted. Not violently, not dramatically, just a quiet, powerful crack in the story she'd been telling herself. The story where he was the one with the final say. The story where she was always too much, too emotional, too needy. The story where missing someone meant she had to keep hurting for them. But no more. She sat on the edge of her bed, looked at her reflection in the closet mirror. She looked tired, but beautiful, soft, but stronger. And then she whispered it to herself, with no one there to hear but her own soul. Enough. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of a deep, rooted clarity. Enough of shrinking to be loved. Enough of carrying ghosts in a heart that's still learning how to heal. Enough of blaming herself for the ways someone else failed to show up. She placed her hand over her chest, and for the first time she wasn't trying to hold herself together. She was holding herself sacred. She didn't need a reply, didn't need closure. She was the turning point, and when she stood up, nothing outside had changed. She was no longer waiting to be remembered. There were still echoes sometimes, still memories that passed through her like wind through an open window. She no longer checked her phone hoping to see his name. She no longer walked into rooms scanning for his absence. She stopped making excuses in her head, stopped rewriting the past in softer colors, because healing didn't come like thunder. It came like light filtering through a cracked door, slowly, gently, patiently, and she let it in. She began laughing again. Not the polite, forced kind. Real laughter, the kind that bubbles up from the soul. The kind she hadn't heard in her own voice in years. She lit candles for no one but herself, took long walks with no destination, spoke to the moon, not in mourning, but in thanks. She filled her life with beauty, not to impress, not to lure, but simply because she deserved it. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need him to come back and see what he lost. She didn't need anyone to finally say, "You were right to walk away," because she knew. She knew the strength it took to stop loving someone who kept hurting her. She knew the courage it took to sit in the silence and not fill it with a text she'd regret. She knew the heartbreak of choosing herself over the fantasy of who he could have been. And little by little she came home to herself. Not the version of her who tolerated crumbs, Not the version of her who smiled while slowly fading, but the version who stood tall, who knew her softness was a gift, who no longer begged to be loved in return. Her love was never the problem. Her heart was never too much. She was simply offering oceans to men who only knew how to drink from puddles. And now, she sits not waiting for someone to see her. She sees herself, fully, clearly, finally. And if he ever comes back, with soft apologies and haunted eyes, he shall find someone he no longer recognizes. Not because she changed to spite him, but because she finally returned to who she was before the world convinced her she was unworthy. No more waiting, no more aching for half-hearted love. She sits not bitter. She sits not broken. She sits becoming. And the truth is, he did lose her, but she didn't set break. She rose, and this time, she didn't set rise for anyone else. She rose for her.